Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters. I'm here with Scott Janish from what's the brewery?
Sapwood Cellars, yeah.
Sapwood Cellars, also author of New IPA, and all around nice guy and very knowledgeable about hops and using hops. Um, so Scott, how are things going for you? I haven't talked to you for a while.
Yeah, it's been a
Things at
while.
Sapwood and such.
Yeah, we're doing pretty well here actually. We just put in a order a few days ago for some more tanks. We're still on the smaller side. We just did a little over 1,000 barrels
Mhm.
last year, and so maybe close to 50% more this year with some more tanks, and so things are going good, and still pretty small operation where my business partner and I are still pretty heavily involved in a lot of the actual pulling the levers and stuff. So hopefully we can get some more good help this year, and start to think maybe a little more business and a little less beer. But I don't know if that sounds more fun or not, but that's probably where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, careful what you wish for.
Yeah,
Employees are great until they're not. That sort of thing. And you guys have a tap room there, right?
yeah, we have a pretty good sized tap room. We're actually potentially expanding that this year too, and looking at adding like a commercial kitchen or a permanent food truck or something like that too. So
Mhm.
a lot of things that I really don't know a lot about that I'm gonna have to start learning about. So
Nice. So where are you located? So people know where to find you.
yeah, we're in Columbia, Maryland. So if you familiar with like the DC Baltimore area, we're almost like right in between both of those cities. So good location, lots of people all around this year.
Great. I'll have to come and visit.
Yeah, definitely.
I've promised to visit several people out there, so I think I need to get on a plane and come out and make it happen. Another person I need to go visit is good friend John Blickman. I don't know if you know John Blickman. You ever met him?
I have not met him. No.
He's a great guy. He's absolutely hilarious. He's got quite the sense of humor and quite the engineering mind. So he is a problem solver in the engineering world, and he makes beautiful brewing equipment. So all you listeners, if you're looking for new brew equipment, check it out, blickmanengineering.com. They've got everything from your more simplified but still great anvil brewing equipment, and then all the way up to pro brewing gear. So check them out, blickmanengineering.com. John Blickman's been paying for the show, so you don't have to. So the least you could do is check out the website, maybe send him an email, feedback@blickmanengineering.com. Tell him how much you appreciate it. And I'm sure he would very much appreciate getting that email from you. Okay, so Scott, you've been kind of cornered into being a hop guy, I think. Sure,
Yeah.
you know other things, but let's see here. Mike is asking in the chat, hey guys, I'm 3/4 of the way through the new IPA, and I'm wondering what are some of the new developments in hops and hazy hop beers since the book was released?
Good question. Wish I had more time on my hands to write the whole next book, but there's
Book.
definitely
Yes.
there's a lot of new science since the book came out a few years ago, and I think
Sure.
a lot more focus on the style too. I think back when I was writing the book, which is a couple of years before it actually came out, there wasn't a lot of research that was being done
Mhm.
specifically for like hazy hoppy IPAs. It was kind of more just general beer studies for the most part, where you kind of had to piece things together. But now there's a lot more focus specifically on that style, if that's something people are interested in. And
Right.
there's a whole bunch of new stuff now, from genetically engineered or bioengineered yeast strains to
Mhm.
precursor products. There's a lot of new hop products to use, like oil wise. extract wise. And so there's a lot of directions to go with that.
Well, and you did a beer, what, the Locksmith, which was using a bioengineered yeast.
Yeah, so that was we did a collaboration with like a 3-way collaboration. So that was with Omega Yeast, who has a handful of bioengineered strains out now. That was their Cosmic Punch one that's designed for releasing bound thiols. And then the other part of that collab was with Phantasm, which is the, it's essentially dried Sauvignon Blanc skins that are, after they're used in the winemaking process, get dried into a powder, and they're just really rich in the, some of the same thiols. Well, 3MH is the main thiol that it's rich in, and that's also found in some hops, but it's rich in the precursors that the Cosmic Punch can unlock. So, so that was a fun one, and that was, since that was done, the Omega's released some yeast strains that are about 200 times more efficient at releasing those bound thiols. So I think some of those numbers, we actually sent that beer to France to get tested for free thiols, and I think that would get kind of blown out of the water now with what some of these new strains are doing. But that's kind of in some ways it's kind of like that IBU war type thing. Like I think there's probably a ceiling on bound thiol or free thiols, because it starts to some of those beers with those strains, very unique, but I think you can tell right away that those strains are used, and it's kind of still trying to figure out how to best utilize them. I don't know if you've had any experience drinking some of those, or
Yeah, we brewed some and drank quite a few, and using any new ingredient or technique or piece of equipment, I was always of the mind that you need to use each one individually and try it, see what difference it makes, and then kind of use that in your palette of flavors that you're going to use. But when it comes to something like this, like you're saying, you were using the genetically modified yeast, you're using the Phantasm skins, you have to use them in combination. So it makes it much tougher to figure out what you're going to get with any individual ingredient, since they need to be used together.
right.
And some of the things we've done, we did one with Hop Union with J. Prawl, and we just pretty much put in a whole bunch of different stuff. We'll use oils, we'll use the powders, we use and turned out great, but I'm still not sure
what was doing what.
what was doing what, and if we some of the things weren't needed, or some of the things were too much. It seems very difficult. I don't know that anybody's really perfectly using all these ingredients yet, but it's like getting a new tool, and it's got a weird head on it. You're not sure what kind of screw it turns, or maybe you're supposed to use it as a hammer, or it's for something else entirely. You don't really know at this point. But my other thought on it is, it doesn't really replace the actual hops. You have to still use pellet hops or whole cone hops, just because without it, it tastes kind of weird. And you can, like you're saying, you can tell a beer's been made with some of these things, like the bioengineered yeast. I mean, it tastes good, but it's unusual. Let's see here. Chad in the chat, looks like Scott has frozen. Chad in the chat had a question. Let's see. Longtime fan of both Jamil and Scott. My brewing experience is that less is more. How do we turn the drinkers to more subtle flavors? Well, I don't know.
No, I missed a little bit of that. I got cut off. What was the question?
I saw you had locked up, so I went to a question in the chat.
Pro
Uh,
move.
yeah, Chad's asking, how do we turn drinkers into onto more subtle flavors? So bold flavors seem to be really the way for, and I think that's because the average drinker, or most folks aren't that focused on subtle flavors. They're used to bold things. I mean, we've been raising generations with sour candies and intense flavors, and every advertisement for like Mountain Dew is these
Hit me over the
bold.
head with it.
Yes. And so I think there's kind of a loss at that. I think back to when I was first learning about beers, I would taste things and I'd be, oh my God, what's this? And then I'd read about it, and I could kind of learn, as I went. And then I started picking up more and more subtle flavors, to the point now when I can't breathe without noticing aromas. I can't taste anything without thinking about the flavors. So I think for me it was talking about the flavors and learning about the flavors. I think once you do, and you get somebody to start thinking about the taste, it sticks with them. They realize that they have the ability. So maybe that's a way. Do you have any thoughts on that, Scott?
I think a lot of times people get intimidated when they get put on the spot to like taste something, smell something, and what do you smell? What do you taste? But if it's more of a memory thing to me. I'm sure you've heard people say that, where it's if you're in the right frame of mind and you smell something, it kind of takes you back to a certain childhood memory or something like that, which generally is like some candies or something like that. But so people can not overthink it when they're trying to come up, smell and taste certain flavors and things. And but I completely agree. Now it's become a lot of the beers that we're putting out for the non-beer people are just over the top ridiculous fruited beers or things like that. And so it's a good question, because so who's drinking the pilsners or Hellas's and of the world, and a lot of times now that's the people brewing them, and not as much as people coming in. But there's a little bit of a shift in the last year or so, I think, towards more of those beers.
Yeah, myself, I'm drinking Harvey's Old Ale, which I muled over from England in a
that's awesome.
5-liter mini keg.
That's awesome.
I found that my luggage will hold about 4 of these, and some dirty underwear, and still be under 70 pounds. So that's my new trick to get beer from England.
I always think that when you go to a bottle share and someone's been traveling, or they bring the bottles to share, and 100% it was right next to their dirty underwear the whole time. So every good bottle of beer.
Oh. Kind of missed the last part of what you're saying. It's like we're having some internet issues. All right. Is there a new hop product that you're really excited about?
I don't know how new it is necessarily, but I've become a big fan of Hopsteiner.
You're cutting out. Think
have any. Oh, we breaking up, or?
Yeah, I wonder if we should shut off your video.
Yeah, I'll try that one
and see if that helps. So you're about to say about the new Hopsteiner product.
Yeah, so Salvo is what it's called, and it's alpha acid, so it's one that you can add to like your.
Yeah, still cutting in and out.
Quite a bit now, and it's in combination with still like a 2 pounds per barrel whirlpool rate, but it's just adding even more hop compounds into your fermenter essentially, and that's a relatively affordable one too, which makes it even more useful in the brewery.
All right, can you you re-say what you liked it?
Yeah, did I break up again?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Essentially, it's a good product, I think, because it has no alpha acid, so it's like the hop compounds, the hop oils that you want, but you can add it in your kettle at whirlpool temperatures and not get any IBU pickup from it. And so for us, it's just a great way to increase the hop compound load that's going into your fermenter. It's more of a in addition to our whirlpool hops, so we're still like 2 pounds per barrel or something like that, plus some more hop oil just to really up it. And for us, it's just creates a good base. I think that's part of the tricky part about heavily hop beers is still getting enough balance in with some hot side hops and that like hot side flavoring base. And so I like products that can kind of give you that without tilting it too high into the IBU territory. So
right. Yeah, I think we use that in that beer with J. Prawl, and it seems like a fascinating product, a great product, like you're saying. No alpha acids, but essentially all the other compounds of flavor and aroma. So could be a great product. All right, I need to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have more with Scott Janish right after this. All right, we're back. We're talking hops, new hop products, and let's see here. Scott, we have a question that's sent in to Brew Strong at thebrewingnetwork.com. If you have your brewing questions, you send them in there, and eventually I will get to them, like this one from 2010. Yeah. Michael writes, "Good day, gentlemen. A question I was pondering the other day. We're quite familiar with using IBUs to determine the amount of bitterness the beer will have. What about flavor? Aside from trial and error, is there a measurement that we can use to determine the flavor impact? Are IBUs related to flavor in some way that would allow a calculation? I haven't researched this at all, and perhaps there is some work already out there. It's occurred to me as I'm trying to replicate Sierra Nevada's Summerfest. I'm really impressed with the notable hop flavor this beer offers from Saaz, I think. And I was trying to figure out how much to use for a late addition. Hope this is a useful question and one that you might be able to shed some insight on. Cheers, Michael." What do you think about that, Scott? I personally, I think a lot of my hop flavor aroma calculation is just based on experience. Well, I did this before, so and that worked, or I want a little bit more, or what do you think? Is there in our future some sort of, well, this compound and this hop is this amount of milligrams, and I'm gonna dose with that, or is everything going to get separated out to where we're just using very specific
we probably
products?
lose a lot of people if we start getting that into the weeds. But I don't know. I think I agree kind of with you that IBU number for me is more of a repeatability number. Like this is how I perceived a beer to taste or how bitter it was. This was the
All right. Yeah, I think That's a good question, Michael. I don't really know the answer, but a lot of it's experience and a lot of it is, um, just going with recipes that and people that and what their recommendation might be. Generally, I think there doesn't need to be a whole lot of precision in that. The difference between 2 ounces and 3 ounces is not huge in a lot of hop aroma and flavor sometimes in a homebrew. So I think if you can get within 20%, you're going to be pretty close.
Yeah. And there's just so many other factors. How old is the hop? How many alpha acids does that lot have? And it's really hard to know how precise your estimate even is.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mike in the chat was asking thoughts on the non-GMO White Labs 077 Tropical yeast blend. Making a hazy with it right now. It's coming out beautifully.
That one is a strain I have not yet had a chance to brew with or experiment with, but it's definitely on my list. I know there's a lot of excitement for that strain since there's a lot of countries that can actually legally use bioengineered yeast strains, and so this is one that can supposedly release some of these styles, but they can actually use them. So that's I don't have a lot of to say on that, but I'm looking forward to trying it. I know that the numbers that they released when the product came out made it seem like it is going to be a pretty powerful strain to experiment with. But I think kind of like what you were saying, that's one of those where you almost want to do just a base beer with it first and just kind of see where it's at, and then start trying to layer in more flavors to double down on the fruitiness or whatever the case. But in general, those strains I've found to be once you dry hop them, that thiol fermentation character gets pretty heavily reduced. I don't know if you've noticed that too in the beers you've had, but I think that's even more the case in the strains that aren't bioengineered and probably don't have as high of a thiol release count. But again, that's a strain I need to experiment with.
Yeah, I've got to try it too. I will pull that card and see if they will send me some for free. I don't know. I will guilt them into it. They've got nothing to be guilty about. What's your feeling? I did a show with Mitch Steele about bioengineered stuff. What's your feeling on it? I mean, should breweries make sure that customers know before selling them beer that has bioengineered yeast, or is it not an issue?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last little bit of that. We broke up a little bit.
Should breweries be very clear to customers about the fact that they used a bioengineered yeast, or is it a non-issue?
I think we've been in the beers.
Oh. Well, it looks like we're kind of cutting in and out again. That's a shame, because Scott is really a great person to talk to and has a lot of knowledge. And I'm sitting here just filling time. Oh, there you are.
There, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. I got a full strength here on Wi-Fi, and I've no answers.
All right, what's your answer to the bioengineered yeast question?
That we do tell everyone when we use it. It's pretty obvious. We
Okay. Well, we found out that it is obvious, so they tell people. So that's good. Let's see here. James from Salinas, he asked, hey lads, been cycling through a few different dry hopping practices, and one I wanted to know more about was adding hops before primary fermentation was finished. I get the whole oxygen scavenging from the yeast, but what about flavor, aroma contributions from the metabolizing of glycosides? Is that a real thing, or is it just the warm temp that's extracting more oils? It's really keeping me up at nights. Clarification would be greatly appreciated. Did you hear that whole question?
I did. Yeah, that's
Okay.
a good one.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead while we still have you?
The getting glycosides in for your, first of all, your yeast strain you use has to, have beta glucosidase enzyme during fermentation to even release these bound glycosides. But I think you can get those glycosides in just through whirlpool addition. If you're going that route, so you wouldn't have to necessarily do a active or late fermentation dry hop to get that sort of release. But even when I've used direct enzymes during fermentation, the beta glucosidase enzyme to release those compounds, I've never really.
All right. So Scott is never really something. Hopefully we'll find out shortly what he never really did. Oh, you back?
I'm back. Sorry.
You said you were talking about using an enzyme, and then you said you never really.
Yeah, just never had a beer when I've used a commercial enzyme like that. That wowed me in a way that even like a bioengineered yeast strain has. So I think those glycosides is, if you're freeing those, I think that's more of a complexity builder than like a complete game changer.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I'm the same way, and I always believed that when everyone was talking about throwing hops into the fermenter during fermentation, I was always thinking, well, just put them in the whirlpool, extract out all the compounds that you need, a low temperature whirlpool, and then that's in there. It's in the beer, and then you don't have the problem, because we did some early on. We did some testing of putting hops into the ferment, dry hopping during fermentation or dry hopping after fermentation. And every person in blind tasting picked the after fermentation dry hopping. And the reason was the fermentation dry hopping, it produced a harshness that was very unpleasant. And so we ended up, never doing that. And later on, I started focusing on adding to the whirlpool instead. But yeah, I think the need for fermentation dry hopping is not there. I don't see the benefit to it. Like you're saying, the bioengineered yeast will extract a lot more, and we'll see what this White Labs yeast can do. Yeah, sounds like fun. All right, time for a second break. We'll be back right after this. All right, we're back. I'm talking with Scott Janish, author, brewer. They've got a great place out in Maryland that you can stop by and enjoy their little tap room, and their fine beers. I'm going to these days.
Apparently not a very good Wi-Fi connection, but the beers are pretty good.
Right. If you're going there for Wi-Fi to do some work,
just forget about it.
Forget about it. You don't. You'll be able to rattle off a couple of tweets, maybe check a stock price or something, but that's going to be it. Well, it gives you more focus on the beer. Let's see here. Speaking about focusing on the beer, and people with great Wi-Fi, by the way, is my good friends at Brew Chatter in Sparks, Nevada, right near Reno. Great folks. They have an amazing homebrew shop, and more amazing is their customer service and their knowledge about brewing. Really good, great guys, RJ and Josh. You go down there, they've got a little bar in the shop where you can enjoy a lot of great beers that they've personally picked while you're doing your homebrew shopping, and anything you need to make the best beer in the world, they have it. So go check them out. Good folks. You can find them online at brewchatter.com, and you can find them in person in Sparks. If you go there, tell them I sent you. Good friends of mine. Love them both. All right. We're talking hopping. Let's see here. Checking the chat. And Ken saying, hey, Jamil, glad to see you still supporting the VN, still doing podcasts. Appreciating the fact that we're still doing podcasts. You bet, Ken. Love doing the podcast, love being part of the community. So there you go. Cody from Fargo asks, yo, my brewing bros and hoes. What's the deal with hop extract? My brewmate wants to make an IPA using hop extract. I've seen both hop resins and hop oils in the extract sections on Northern Brewer, More Beer, Hop Tech, etc., and was wondering exactly what the differences are. Are there specific extracts for bittering, flavor, aroma, boil, no boil, dry hopping additions? Which to use for what part of the hop schedule? Also, if you have any knowledge of extraction methods and how they differ, I would love to know. Finally, I've seen single hop extractions. How would the perception of oil versus traditional hopping for a specific variety differ? Sorry for running on, just a lot of info I've looked for and very little found on this semi-new product technique. If you feel it better warrants a full show, that'd be even better. Thank you for all you do for the homebrewing community. Brew Strong. What do you think on that, Scott?
There's so many different hop extract products now. It's almost like like you mentioned with the bioengineered strains, how it's like not replacing hops. I think even the extracts themselves aren't completely the same as dry hops themselves. Just today we used the new one from Freestyle Hops. It's called Sub-Zero Hop Keef. I don't know if you've seen that one yet, but they're nice enough to send us some to try. But it's a like lupulin only kind of gland extract that's pourable in I believe it's ethanol, and it's just like 1 liter, I think, replaces about 44 pounds of hops.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, it's been more of, a lot of these products are more of in addition to actual hops. Right. I think there's just a lot you don't get with like mouthfeel and things like that with T90 and cryo. It's more of a way to kind of like up, play, like maybe you don't completely love some of the hops you have, or you're not happy with your extraction or whatever, you can kind of tweak it a little bit after fermentation with some of these oils. But there's just so many now, even on the hop side. I mean, there's some just still for bittering, or you can, do the hop variety specific ones for their oils. Like if you look at like the survivable research, you can use some of those the hops that are high in those survivables as an extract, as a way to try to really increase your hop saturated flavor. But yeah, there's a lot to talk on oils there. I'd say for the most part, a little bit too much of those oils is way too much.
Mm-hmm.
We've done some benchtop trials, and it's pretty quickly you can there's like an extracty, just green cooked hop thing that you can get from oils. And so I think it's very tinkering in a way that really gets you a little bit of that character without just completely overtaking the beer.
Right. I feel the same way. It's like, most additions, if you're making, like, let's say a peach, lager or something, you may end up wanted to add, a tiny bit of peach extract in the top, because after fermentation, you're really missing a lot of that character. And it's kind of the same thing on the hops. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the new stuff. I mean, I do, and part of it is because I haven't. I don't mean I dislike it. It's just that I'm not crazy gung ho to use it in everything.
Yeah.
Is what I mean by not a huge fan. When we were doing the Evil 3 beer, Mitch Steele, Tasty McDowell, and myself, we were throwing in a lot of hops because we wanted to maximize the bittering to balance out 11.5% beer. And we, in the early rounds, I was tasting too much vegetal from the amount of hops, even using a high alpha hop. So we cut the high alpha hops, didn't eliminate it, but reduced it down, and then used some CO2 extract, alpha extract from Hopsteiner. And we used that and we were able to add enough to where the wort was rejecting it. It was just sticking to the side of the kettle. And so we maxed that out, and we're able to reduce the actual leaf matter. And you couldn't get rid of the leaf matter because then it didn't taste right, but you could really reduce it down, and it improved the overall flavor because you got rid of some of the the excessive kind of vegetal thing you get from lots and lots of hop matter.
I don't know if you've used some of those like post fermentation oils that are supposed to kind of replicate dry hopping, but I think a lot of times in those cases you take a compound like myrcene, which is like 1-2% of the myrcene of a pellet actually gets into the beer, but then when you make an extract from it and you make that whole thing soluble, you're creating like the extracts themselves come across to me tasting really green, and I think part of that is you're making some of these compounds that usually aren't getting into your beer 100%.
Right. You cut out again, but I understand what you're saying. Some of those compounds normally come across in minimal amounts, and what I think what Scott was referring to is that if you get these compounds in greater amounts, it's going to it could come across green and vegetal just from that as well. So there's just a lot of things to learn and to experiment with all these new hop products. So it's kind of a cool world for brewers of commercial and homebrewing.
But there's almost nothing better than like just a hop pellet cone or traditional T90s that are just right on the money. Then it's hard to replicate or to beat that.
Yeah, I agree. Ken's asking, I'll ask a question in the chat. He's asking, I'll ask a question related to the conversation. Last summer, I brewed a smash pale ale using 2-row and Galaxy hops. My intent was to first brew a West Coast style of the beer, followed by the same beer brewed to NEPA style with a different water profile and different yeast, but the same grain and hop bill. My water profile for the mash was as follows. Let's see here. Yeah, calcium gypsum, 12 gram, a little bit of calcium chloride, some Epsom salt, table salt. Let's see. All right. Sparge water was set to match that. Ultimately, there was a harsh bitterness in the finish that wasn't the hops. I concluded that this calcium carbonate was way too high for hop bill that was only targeted at 43. Does that make sense? 103 parts per million calcium. magnesium. Sulfates are pretty high. I'm not sure which of the beers the salt additions were for. I would say that that must have been for the West Coast, because you wouldn't make a hazy with that high a sulfate and that low a chloride. Sulfate 305, chloride 53. Scott.
that is pretty high for
Right.
sulfate. Yeah, I mean, generally that can just increase the perception of the dryness of a beer at that level, even if it's, not even that dry.
Right. So I think that's part of where you're getting your harsh bitterness from. And so you'd either want to up the chlorides to help balance, or reduce your sulfates down to get a little lower on the West Coast, and then you want to reverse that for the hazy. You want to go much higher on the chlorides and much lower on the sulfates. Scott's got a great website that has a lot of information on it. When I was dialing in the Heretic hazy beers, I found his information very very helpful and interesting. Let's see. Yes, he says that was the West Coast, that and he never got to the NEPA. Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of biting bitter. The other thing to check on a beer like that is make sure your pH isn't too low or too high. That can have an effect as well. You want your, with heavy dry hopping, that'll raise the pH, and sometimes that can not taste so great either. So check your pH as well. All right, let's see here. David asks, let's see here. He talks about he lives in Hicksville, Ohio. And I think we made fun of that in a previous show. Said Hicksville, Ohio is named after a man named Hicks, but not the railroad tycoon from Hicksville, New York. I guess there's lots of Hicksvilles around. Anyways, I'm planning on buying my hops in bulk from now on, and was wondering, how long can I store vacuum sealed hops in the freezer until I start losing alpha acids? How about for non-vacuum sealed hops, such as in a Ziploc bag? Thanks, your hick buddy, Dave. What do you think, Scott?
Well, all I heard is the last part about a Ziploc bag.
Oh, how long can you store either vacuum sealed or non-vacuum sealed hops before you're losing a lot of alpha acid?
I think this is something I've recently talked with Stan Hieronymus about. That a lot of hops, really, if they're stored in a good condition, really maintain themselves really well. I mean, the alpha acids might go down a little bit, but a lot of the oils that you're really after in these hops are staying there for a while. In fact, there's even, I guess some breweries that are targeting some, maybe 2-3 year old hops if they're stored well. Really, they prefer the character they get from them. So I think you can, at least a couple of years be pretty confident in most hops.
Right. I agree. It's surprising, and I think temperature is the key here, because the Mylar bag flushed with nitrogen, and then sealed and all that, that's great. And I think that in a very cold freezer is perfect. That's the best you're going to get. And I think if you do that, those hops 5 years down the road, still great. And the key is the cold temperatures, because things all reactions slow down the colder it gets. So any oxidation, things like that, I think you're really not going to run into as much of a problem. And I guess the oxidation of the oils and you know, as far as alpha acids, you know, what I don't know for a fact, but what I've read in the past is that as the alpha acids are declining, the bitterness of the beta acids is coming up and kind of balances it out. I've used hops that were 3, 4, 5 years old and not really had a problem because they were stored, you know, absolutely frozen. So, and even bags that I would open, I would just, you know, roll them up and tape them shut and then put them back in the freezer. And even those hops turned out pretty good. So I think you have a long time before really worrying about a problem with storage of the hops.
Especially if you're being used topside, I think
Yes.
they can go even further. And then your nose is really your best guide when it comes to dry hopping. You know, if it's 3 years old but it still smells, you know, amazing, it's
Yeah.
safe to use.
If they're still, you know, intense green, not that weird yellowish thing, and they smell good. If they smell cheesy or, you know, sulfury or something like that, don't use those. You know, save them for your lambic experiments. But don't use them in the beer. If they smell good, look good, feel good, taste good, you know, go for it. I think that would be all right. Let's see here. How are we doing on time? All right. We'll take one more break. We'll be back right after this. All right, we're back. I'm here with the always interesting and knowledgeable Scott Janish. And we're talking about new hop products and answering some Q&A questions from you know, this one's only 22 years old. Or 23. Oh, 20, yeah, 22 and a half. Let's call it. I mean, I'm getting to these things right away. Greg says, greetings. I was recently listening to an archive of the Sunday session for the first time Mitch Steele was on back in 2006. Oh my God, who was alive in 2006? We're old people. He mentioned that while at Budweiser, they did a lot of hop blending. They were doing it to make their bittering and hop flavors taste the same every time. As a home brewer, though, I'm hop blending to develop different flavors and trying to find new combos. I would really enjoy it if you guys did a show about hop blending and give us your experiences with what hops go good together and how to determine ratios to get great hop flavors from combining multiple varieties. It'd be great if you could get Ralph. Let's see here. There you go. So Greg, Auburn, Maine. What do you do a lot of single hop beers, Scott, or do you tend to always use more than one hop variety?
I think we do quite a few. Like just today, I was dry hopping a double IPA that's going to be all of their new selected Simcoe, and that's the only dry hop it's going to get. But even in those, I tend to like to do like half cryo of a variety and then half T90 of a variety. I think that kind of helps build in enough like complexity, and like the cryo kind of helps, you know, that the aroma pop a little more, and it's just they work together even though they're the same variety.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of just like hop blending, I think it's pretty easy to overdo it. I think in our experience, like even going past like 3 different hop varieties, you tend to just get sort of a generic hoppiness where nothing's really, you know, the star of the show, or not one character is really coming through really good. And so
Mm-hmm.
I like to keep it at like 2 hops for the most part, for the dry hopping, just to really it's to at least give myself the thought that I'm actually in a little more control of what the outcome is.
Right. Yeah, I also tend to dry hop with, no more than 2. So yeah, once in a while I'll do 3, but um, and the single hop thing I really just enjoy because I like to really experience a single hop,
Yeah.
and really kind of, explore the nuances that are in that hop. Because the thing is, when you add additional hops, uh, to kind of a blend, then you're really, if anything, I think it masks some of the subtle hop notes of a particular uh, cultivar of hops. So yeah, I I generally like, to go simple, but um, I think if you're brewing something, especially commercially, um, one of the things that we did when as we were brewing our hazies, some of the hazies, the some of the hops were hard to come by. And so we would experiment with just swapping out different hops at different times. And so we kind of ended up with like a 4 hop kind of blend, a couple on the hot side, a couple on the cold side. It'd be 4 or 5, and sometimes we'd run short of something, and we found hops that tasted better, in our desk trials. We'd find hops that we liked even more than what we were using, and so we'd swap those out, and we were just constantly adjusting our hops and based on what was available, what tasted best. And that was in the hazies, where the goal was fruitiness, mainly. And so it worked out pretty good. um yeah, advice on hop blending, I think, have a goal in mind, right? If your goal is piney, citrusy, then use piney citrusy hops. Use a couple of them. If you're looking for something more floral or soft, or classic hopping, go that route. Um, so I would kind of categorize the hops that you're using into whatever flavor it is you're going for, and then using that. I would not just take some uh Tettnang and Saz and Galaxy and you know Fuggles and you know uh Cascade and Centennial, and just throw all those together, because I think you're just going to make a mess. Kind of what Scott's saying.
Yeah, kind of like layering the like flavors together. I kind of agree with that. And um, just there's just certain hops too that are hard to blend with anyways, because they're just so dominant. Hops like Rawak.
Right. You've cut out again. Yeah. Australian hop, the Rewaka, or the New Zealand hop. Yeah, that's got its own intensity. And other hops do too. But they're blendable. And a lot of times it'll be uh, the source of the hop. So a lot of times they'll take Cascade and something else, and they'll marry them together and then come off with something, and that there's a character to that can be blended with other hops. All right. Let's see here. Scott, you still with us?
Still with you. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's unfortunate. You know, if it was anyone else, Scott, I think I would have just, you know, hung up and, you know, called it a day.
Well, I appreciate you hanging in there with me.
You're always great, and you're so knowledgeable and fun to chat with. I really appreciate you doing the show with me today. And we'll have you back on again, hopefully with a better connection. Or maybe the best thing would be for me to come out there, visit you, and we'll do a show in your tap room or something.
I think that we should absolutely make that happen.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I would love to do it.
It sounds like you got a lot of people on the East Coast you're supposed to be hitting up anyways, right? So
yes, I absolutely do. There's a ton that I've promised I would come and visit. I think if I came out there, I'd need to spend at least 6 months in order to visit everybody. So, but yeah, you're on my list. Expect me to show up in your tap room one of these days.
That would be awesome. I hope we make that happen.
We will make it happen. And I owe my good friend John Blickman a visit as well at Blickman Engineering. They're out in Indiana, and I'd love to visit everybody. And that's not far from the East Coast. Maybe I'll combine it all. We'll see. But if you enjoy the show and want to see it keep going, make sure to reach out to our good friend John Blickman at Blickman Engineering. You can email him feedback@blickmanengineering.com. He set that up specifically for people on this show to be able to email him, because it used to be something else and I kept saying feedback. So he's a good guy, and he enjoys when he gets those emails from you folks. So keep it up. It is much appreciated. Check out Brew Chatter, brewchatter.com. Good folks as well. And get yourself a copy of New IPA, the Scott Janish book, or at least go to his website, check out all his great writings there. I found it very useful. I found it very helpful in my brewing to read the New IPA book and Scott's website. Lots of good information in there. Scott is very generous and forthcoming with his information. So thank you, Scott. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, brew strong.